Welcome friends, today is Thursday and we have a new video. Unfortunately, it's not quite the video I wanted because I was trying to put out the video about the current damage of all the healers in Dragonflight, just to give an idea to all of you without the beta, what's the situation right now for healers in Dragonflight, but luckily Blizzard comes in to help by pushing out a few more changes in the beta of Dragonflight that are worth going over. There is a much more welcome piece of news because players were starting to get a little bit worried about this, right? It was one of the worries as well in our review of Dragonflight for the profession system because it's crafting orders. So in the next few days, we will make, of course, a video about crafting orders since this is going live right now and we have to wait, a few more players to actually engage in the crafting order system since it's basically a PvP system. You need to have other players in the crafting order system to see how it's working properly. So this seemingly very important new addition for Dragonflight will be able to be tested, albeit perhaps some might say a little bit late. In case you have completely forgotten or you have completely skipped what this is even about, crafting order is the professions tied system which is going to allow you to order things you want crafted from other players rather than essentially having to interact like a human being. With crafting orders you can try to automate and to make things as streamlined and automatic self-processing as possible. You say you want this piece of gear, you just fill up a crafting order for a crafter of that profession to craft it for you. Of course, Blizzard has tried to put some caveats into this system because they were trying to limit the amount of things you can do with just brute forcing everything with gold, right? You're like, well, Blizzard is giving us multiple raid quality mythic gear pieces in Dragonflight. This means that anyone with tons of gold can simply line up the crafting order system with a bunch of these epics for themselves. That was one of the main concerns. Blizzard has already pointed out that one of the items in particular will be the item which will elevate the item level of the piece of gear. That thing right there is going to be bind on pickup. That thing right there won't be able to be provided by the crafter you are dealing with in your crafting order. So even if you had 54.3 million gold, you still would not be able to deck yourself in crafted epics just because you have the money, because you would still need these BOPs. Either way, I guess we will see now soon in more detail how the crafting order system will end up working. It's gonna be interesting to see now that finally we're gonna have this system live in the beta to test. Now, besides this change, we actually have more balance tuning. Of course, why not? We have a new build. We have just gotten a new build in the beta, and usually what follows is a little bit more of changes to the specs and the classes. I have to report, disappointingly, we are now getting once again another week without a change to Elemental Shaman and Resto Shaman, which continue to be one of the least changed specs in the entire beta. And by the way, I am holding all of you at fault for this, because you kept for 2 months complaining about your spec and asking Blizzard, why aren't my talents as good as Elementals? Why isn't my talent tree as cool looking as Resto Shaman? You kept going on and on and on with this until Blizzard unironically convinced themselves that those talent trees were perfect, and since then have not touched these talent trees. And we will see soon how this is kind of a problem right now, since, for example, light spoilers, Elemental Shaman has one of the lowest damage out of the PS players, and Restoration Shaman has the lowest healing out of the healing specs, for example. However, talking about the changes themselves, we have a groundbreaking change for Death Knight, because one of your utility talents in the general tree, suppression, goes from increasing your avoidance by 3% to reducing the damage taken from area of effect attacks by 3%. This is very crucial because avoidance reduces the damage taken by area of effect attacks by 3%, while this talent reduces the damage taken from area of effect attacks by 3%. So yeah, it goes without saying, you can see for yourself the massive change for Death Knight. One of the other specs getting changed is Balanced Druid. Now, you're all getting your hopes up, so I'm gonna be a nice guy and stop your torment. Yes, you are getting buffed, albeit slightly. Still, it's something, okay? Don't complain too much. First, it's Orbital Strike. We already pointed out the initial nerf to Orbital Strike, and that was the nerf to the name. That's likely because Blizzard, although they thought the name was quite cool, eventually realized 95% of the player base would have been unable to pronounce Syzygy. So they went from Syzygy to Orbital Strike. Either way, the buff to not Syzygy is that now it also gives you 1 minute cooldown off of your Celestial Alignment, which now makes your CA a 2-minute cooldown instead of a 3-minute cooldown. Now remember that not Syzygy is a choice option with your current Shadowlands Legendary Primordial Arcanic Pulsar, which has also been giga nerfed and now requires 600 Astral Power to spend to proc it. If you do at least end up choosing this, you get an extra buff to this talent. Another talent getting buffed, this was because it was nerfed a few days ago by 40%, was Power of Goldrin. The change is that now, instead of doing arcane damage, it does astral damage. This means you are benefiting more from your nature damage buffs and your arcane damage buffs. As you know, astral damage is arcane and nature damage combined, so now this talent can benefit from both sources of damage increases at once. Still won't make up for the fact that it used to have 104% spell power and now it has 67. At the very least, it's not as bad as it was right after it got nerfed. And then you finish with a nerf, which is not really a nerf, it's more like a tooltip change for clarity. Umbral Embrace is specifying that now this talent is only going to work if you are inside an eclipse. Well, good thing Balanced Druid are inside an eclipse for basically 99% of their time, so it's pretty fine. You get away this round of tuning via Balanced Druids with no nerfs. So consider yourself lucky, especially given the current record that Blizzard has had with you, with nerfing you recently. So that's a pretty good week, I would say, for a Balanced Druid. A pretty successful one. Massive change, finally, just like the last time we saw a massive change to Guardian Druid, this week we continue with the groundbreaking improvements to this spec, which has been left behind a lot. Layered Main, your Iron Fur power-up, goes from giving your Iron Fur, instead of a 10.0% chance to apply 2 stacks at once, now it goes from 10.0% to 10%. So you can, once again, pretty clearly see the intent of Blizzard in improving the state of this spec right here. Massive change, and this time I'm not joking, this one is a pretty positive change for Preservation Evoker because Echo no longer has a cast time. You know, all things considered, is one of the biggest buffs you're gonna see. 1.5 seconds shaved off of the cast time of an ability is pretty big. So, pretty good change for Echo for Preservation Evoker. If you've not played the beta, you wouldn't know, but Echo with a cast time was a trash spell. I mean, the heal itself was 40% weaker than the initial heal of Riptide, without even counting the hot of Riptide. You just wanted this ability for the extra effect. The casting another non-echo spell for 70% of normal healing, you know, duplicating it, that was a strong part. And having to hard cast Echo before you got to duplicate your next spell just felt bad. So it's very good now that it's instant. I would even take nerfing the actual healing of Echo. Even if you took down the spell power from 120 to 70%, it would still be fine, because that's not the point of casting this ability. We then have a reversion. Blizzard is reverting the nerf that they gave Mistweaver Monks a few days ago to Enveloping Mist. So Enveloping Mist was nerfed by 20%, now Enveloping Mist is buffed by 20%. The only difference is that now it's also gonna cost a bit more mana, 15% more base mana compared to before. Still, it's fine. We then have a nerf to all of the monks, but if I had to take a guess, this nerf is more relevant to Brewmaster, mostly because Brewmaster was able to make more use of this, because they also need this more, which is Expel Harm. It was the talent which made Expel Harm's healing increase by up to 200% based on your missing health. Of course, this works very well with a Brewmaster tank. The healing of Expel Harm that you could get out of was actually pretty significant as a emergency heal, and now it's getting nerfed. It's getting cut in half. Now it's increased by 100% instead of 200% based on your missing health. It couldn't, of course, be a video about balance tuning without having Priest clogging the entire fucking thing. Once again, this time they are shaking things up, they are feeling frisky, so instead of giving us a wall of text to Shadow, they are giving us a wall of text to Discipline. Aegis of Wrath and your Power Shield extra absorbs gets nerfed from 50 to 30%. You have Contrition. The extra healing to targets with Atonement when you use Penance also gets nerfed significantly because it's a 60% nerf to the talent, Contrition. Then Divine Aegis actually gets nerfed. You know, this one on 2 ranks used to be 60%, and then it was down to 50, down to 30, now it's down to 10. It's been nerfed by 2/3 of its power. 10% of your crit healing gets turned into an Absorb Shield. You also get a massive nerf to the mana regen of your Mindbender, nerfed by over 60%. The cutoff, the payback for this nerf is that now if you go and take Void Summoner, now you get a twice as fast cooldown reduction to your Mindbender. It can somewhat even out to be the same, and it is much better for the damage of this, because you don't care about mana in Mythic Plus, you care about damage. You have talents to make your Shadow Fiend do damage in Mythic Plus, just like your Legendary right now in Shadowlands. So this talent making your Shadow Fiend coming off cooldown much faster is much better for your damage in Mythic Plus. Now, the only reasonable and mentionable change to Holy Priest is the meme that is Lightwell. Blizzard has been trying for a long time to make this piece of garbage actually usable. Now the changes to make this usable is that now the range of Lightwell goes from 10 yards to 20 yards, so it's much easier to make it work, and the heal has gotten much stronger. From 27% spell power to 82% spell power is 3 times as strong as it was before. To finish, not just for Discipline but for everyone, but in particular for Discipline, as to not make things too depressing for them. Given the mostly nerfs that they have received, many of the changes to making Power War Shield weaker and the synergy with Power War Shield weaker is because Power War Shield has been buffed in base power. Now Power War Shield is 20% stronger by baseline, so that ought to make things a little bit more even with the nerfs you have received. Only one thing worth mentioning for Rogue: we have gone through quite a long list of buffs to Rogue as an attempt from Blizzard to rebalance their aura modifier being nerfed by a lot. One of the things Blizzard is not okay with after buffing it was the damage to Envenom. Envenom was buffed by 40%, and now it's gotten reverted back to its original number, from 22% attack power per combo point to 16% attack power per combo point. As I said, disappointingly, we skip past Shaman because they are not getting changed whatsoever. Warlock, which also quietly and silently hasn't really gotten changed that much recently as well. And we finish with Warrior. Nothing really too worthwhile or too important. Once again, Blizzard seems to have had this fetish for Warrior in constantly changing many of the numbers by not too much, like Ashen Juggernaut buffing you for 15 seconds instead of 12, Hack and Slash giving your Rampage a 25% chance to refund a charge or Raging Blow instead of a 20% chance. Battering Ram gives your shield charge a 20% more crit and damage instead of a 15% chance. So it's a lot of busy work, but not really anything too major being changed for Warrior for all of the 3 specs. With these changes behind us, what we have left for the day is the new Realm First achievement added in Dragonflight. As you know, Mythic Plus has been elevated as its final power-up level to be a +20. That's how high you have to go to get the best gear, which is where the new achievement will take place. Realm First Dragonflight Keystone Hero will now be a Realm First achievement for the first players able to complete a +20 dungeon within the time limit. This was a thing before, of course. It was a thing in Shadowlands, it was a thing in BFA, except it was for +15. But now that Dragonflight is considering +20 the new standard for top level of Mythic Plus, that's where the achievement is going to be found. So that's the last of the changes for today in this new beta build, which I believe is the 46260. That's where we are at the moment. Now, with this being said and done for today, there's nothing left more to talk about, so I'm going to leave you to the rest of your Thursday. Thanks, of course, as usual, guys, to all of my Patreon supporters for being a good help and being great contributors in what allows me to continue to produce content for WoW. You can, of course, support in other ways, which don't include actually spending money, like, for example, liking and commenting down below on this video, as well as, of course, subscribing to the channel itself. You can then finally, for more social interactions, and general parasocial behaviors, follow me on Twitter, as well as subscribing to my Patreon right over at these two links. Subscribing to Patreon, which will also give you access to my Discord server. If you ever want to pop by to ask some questions, have a chat, give some feedback about the content, I'm usually always available there as well. Now we are leaving. Thank you guys for watching, see you guys soon, and in the meantime, I am indeed quite worried. We are now at the 27th of October. I gave October until the end of the month to start getting cold before we got into November, and so far I am still in short sleeves, which is not a good sign.